Welcome to the video edition of The Fourth Curtain, featuring this week's interview. Catch the extended audio version with Alex and Aaron's commentary wherever you get your podcasts. On with the show.
Hello, podcast listeners, and welcome to this edition of the Fourth Curtain podcast. We have a big treat in store for you today. We are joined by a longtime friend with some incredible job titles, such as writer, cinematics director, creative director, New York Times best-selling author, voice actor, farmhand. Farmhand?
Farmhand.
Yes. You know him from his longstanding contributions to the Halo and Destiny franchises, including the voice of Halo's Grunt. It's none other than Mr. Joseph Staten. Hey, Joe. How you doing?
Welcome to the
Hey,
show.
Alex, it's great to be here.
That's amazing.
Alex, that was a very kind intro. And I just wanted to start off by saying, and I mean this from the heart, none of this would have been possible without you taking a chance on me many, many years ago. And, it's quite regularly I think about that. And I'm very appreciative of that. It has set my life on a whole different direction and led to wonderful things. I mean, all the things you mentioned, but also meeting my wife, which maybe we'll get into in this podcast, having some kids. But it's
farmhand.
Farmhand. It's
the farmhand predates. Farmhand predates me.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's true. Well, I'm currently unemployed, so maybe farmhand will be a new job that I go to. But seriously, Alex, that means a lot to me, and it's great to talk to you now, many years on after that critical choice you made. And of course, Aaron, it's great to talk to you too.
Of course. I don't want to start crying in the first 5 minutes, dude.
I know. Thanks for saying that.
Who's cutting onions?
You thought this was going to be a game-related podcast? No, my friend.
Let's hug.
It is me. I do remember when you came in to interview, and you had to. I very distinctly remember that you had come out of Northwestern.
Yep.
And coming out of Chicago, Northwestern was the other Chicago school on the other side of town in the nicer neighborhood with the nicer campus and the better looking people. And so, I remember that distinctly. And I remember you had, you get a degree in theater?
So I started off as a theater major, wanted to be a playwright. And I realized that Northwestern allowed this cool thing, which was, if you stayed within the School of Speech, which is now the School of Communications, you could take all the theater classes you wanted and also get priority registration on some other classes in different departments. And I pretty quickly learned that I loved writing. I love reading and writing plays and all kinds of dramatic stuff. But I was also really interested in economics and political science and all these other things too. And so at that time, being a theater major was just a little bit more limiting in terms of what you could register for. So I ended up graduating with a double degree from the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences. But the core of my study was in creative things. Took a lot of acting classes and writing, and as also taking macroeconomics and Asian history and all those kinds of things. So my undergraduate education was very eclectic. But I think the game industry at that point was very eclectic too, in terms of the skills that you needed and having the ability to wear lots of different hats. And I don't know what your recollection from the interview was, but I was thinking about it before this call, and I'm like, oh man, I hope they want to hire me because I'd love to work there, but I'm not an engineer. I'm not a trained artist. I just have this collection of skills. But I guess you saw something in this young kid. We're like, come on, fella, jump on in.
Wait, what got you in? What was the gig? What got you into the door?
Well, I'll tell my side of the story, Alex. Then I'm very curious to hear your side of the story too.
This is all about you, Joe. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, at that time, I was working at my family. This was after grad school and after I'd been trying to interview for all kinds of government jobs with the State Department, and which is a whole different story. I was working at the winery, a small family winery in Northern California that used to be in our family. It's since been sold. But I was sleeping on and when I say family winery, this is not, for those of you who are old enough to get this reference, this is not Falcon Crest. This is not some super fancy multi-million-dollar, shishi winery. it was a really small family winery that grew its own grapes for the most part. And so it was very much a farm where my dad and my older brother worked. And they let me come on board and were paying me an hourly wage to basically be their grunt guy. I mean, no pun intended, but like drive tractors, sulfur for the grapes at night, trim suckers off the vines, pull weeds, just like haul stuff and deal with all the things that my brother, who was the general manager of the winery, was like, want to do it, want to do that, why don't you do that? And it was funny because it was this little white house that we all lived in, and I'd gotten a couple degrees, and my brother went to Stanford, and my dad went to Stanford, U Chicago, and Princeton, and had a PhD. Like all these people who'd gone to school and we used their brains and all kinds of stuff. But there we were, like chasing turkeys around and shoveling dirt and driving tractors,
doing some honest work, honest
work, getting some calluses on our little lily white flimsy hands, and it was great. I mean, it was a wonderful time in my life. But at night, to get to the point, I was playing video games, and one of the games that I played was Myth 1, which I could play even on our crummy internet connection, dial-up connection at the winery. And the community, I think, was pretty small, Alex, at the time, or at least somehow I ended up playing with Tunser, and who was the producer on the team, right? And some other people like Doug, Zartman, and like people were just Bungie employees would pop up every once in a while on you, and you play with them. And I got talking with Tunser, and he had I don't know, is it fair to call it a side hustle, Alex, of the Mac gaming magazine. And I told him, I was interested in games, and I knew how to write okay. And he said, why don't you become a reporter? Like, help me review some games for my Mac magazine thing. And eventually that all snowballed into, hey, do you want to come talk to Alex? Because he has a job opening for someone to help him with publishing and like grunt work that I think, parenthetically, Alex doesn't want to do. And I'm like, I'm great at doing grunt work that no one else wants to do. That sounds awesome. Why don't you interview me? So Alex bought me a plane ticket on a fine airline called America Trans
ATA. ATA. You got the one like biscuit cookie thing.
Yeah,
I remember ATA.
Biscuit. I personally called it ass to ass airlines because the seats were pretty small. And literally on the plane to fly out to go to Chicago, this is the only time this ever happened to me on a plane. I get on the plane, we're about to take off, the engines spool up, like throttles to the firewall, it starts to move, and all of a sudden, bang, bang, on both sides of the airplane. I'm like, well, that doesn't sound good. And the pilot's like, a little problem here with with one of our engines. We're gonna give that another go. I'm like, give it another go. And so like, boom. Everybody's like, oh, please don't give it a go a third time. Please don't give it a go a third time. Pilot's like, yeah, so we're going to take this one back to the gate. We're not flying out today on this plane. Everybody's like, phew. So Alex, I just want you to know that interview almost never happened.
Wow.
I'll stop now because if I don't stop,
they
we'll
only
never
had
get through
one
another
airplane,
question.
right? Yeah, they only had. Didn't ATA only have one plane? I just thought they went back and forth to San Francisco.
Yeah, it's pretty much, I think they just had the one plane at Midway that they just kept flying all over the place.
Yeah, that's right. They would fly in Midway.
They flew into Midway.
They were so cheap. It was so cheap.
So that is how I got to an interview with it's fine. I get it. How I got to an interview. But at that point, I was really just a fan of games. I had no experience working in video games. I had a good education, but was just looking for a shot. And Alex kindly gave it to me.
Well, I think you downplay a little bit how infectious your enthusiasm and how articulate you are and how you present yourself so well. You definitely made a great positive impression. And it's interesting. You're talking about late 90s.
Yeah.
And it's not like they were engineers like pouring out of school with a degree in game development. There wasn't such a thing. And we've had like a lot of folks on who just have interesting paths, like just not your standard path.
Yeah.
I'm curious. I mean, I think I could have an answer for this, but your answer is way more interesting. Like that journey that you took.
Yeah.
Going to Northwestern, being in the School of Communications, being kind of, I don't know if you would have described yourself as a theater kid, but I'm imagining you're a theater kid, and you worked in the family business back at home. You grew up in this kind of academic oriented household,
Mm-hmm.
but you did hard work, clearly.
Yeah.
How that shaped you, like how that gave you a different perspective on game dev, where a lot of the folks now, or not now, just whatever, you traditionally think of a game developer as a programmer or a 3D artist or, like game designer coming out of USC or DePaul or whatever. Like you have a very unique perspective.
Well, I mean, I think if I were to look back on it, I mean, I grew up in the late 70s, early 80s, which, by the way, whenever a conversation with my kids who are now in their early 20s and late teens, and I described to them like how life worked back then, right? I was just talking to my daughter about, how did you meet up with people on a Friday night, right? Like how did you find where the party was? And I said, well, I got in my car and I drove down to the Safeway parking lot at 7:00 because everybody knew on a Friday to drive to the Safeway parking lot. And if you weren't there at 7:15, everybody would leave and you'd have no idea where the party was. You had to like get together, all say like, we're going to this person's house and then drive there. And otherwise you missed it, right? Like life was simpler, but you had to be a little like scrappy to get stuff done. And at least growing up in my household, there wasn't a lot of guidance about how to get stuff done. There was just, well, you have this big goal. You want to do this thing, figure it out. Like, we're here to help you if you got questions, but otherwise there's the old Encyclopedia Britannica set sitting there where you can look stuff up, and there's like a bunch of tools in the garage that you can bang away with. But they go figure it out. If you don't know the answer, like go down to the library, like get on your little bike and ride down to the library. So I guess I grew up very much in a household that valued the life of the mind and like intellectual conversation and debate. I mean, our dinner table conversations were very interesting in my household, but also a house that like was pretty humble when it came to money and what we spent things on. And my dad, who was a PhD theologian, worked at a small family vineyard just to get stuff done, and that required a lot of. When I say he was like the vintner and the head of this business, that doesn't mean he just sat in his office all day. Like he was out like doing stuff. He was traveling all the time for business, visiting distributors in Chicago and trying to, gin up income. And so it was a family with a strong work ethic and really valued putting in work. I talk about my dad a lot, but my mom, she was a teacher, and a lot of people in my family are teachers. So I guess I grew up really appreciating what it takes to learn, and the effort that it takes to learn something well, and also appreciating like stuff doesn't come easy. Like you have to work hard. If you want something, it's all about diving in and being curious. And if you don't have those skills, like don't give up, just learn them, like figure them out. And so that's really been my approach to, even now, what I was doing before this call was like, I don't know how Figma works. Like Figma is this UI, UX visualization tool, and we're doing a lot of pitching these days, which we can get into. And I'm like, oh, well, I'm just gonna figure it out. Like I'm just gonna get in there and figure out how this stuff works, and make my own visualizations. I've always been, Alex, like back in the day, like if stuff didn't work, I would figure it out. If I didn't figure it out in a day, I'd sleep under my desk and like figure it out in the morning, and keep on going. And that may have taken years off my life, to be clear, but that's just how my brain works. I'm a fundamentally curious person.
That is so interesting. Like, I do think about that a lot, and it's hard to articulate sometimes, but like how you're talking about it makes so much sense to me. Sometimes I call that responsibility, where it's like if I say I'm gonna do something, well, I'm gonna figure out how to do it. But really, there's something more there. It's kind of like humility. It's like there's no entitlement. It's like I'm going to go and I'm going to make something happen. I'm going to be a self-starter, and that's so
persistence.
Persistent. And I thought you just knew how to use Premiere and that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, totally.
Like making
It's great. I'm convinced that like the only reason Aaron, we've never met in real life, and you may think I'm like 6'3", but I'm not. I'm actually a man of shorter stature. And I'm wondering, I often wonder.
You guys are on the same basketball team.
All right, great. Excellent. And this is just the way my brain works. But I often wonder, how did a person like me, survive, and my genetic lineage survive throughout the generation? Right. Okay. So hide is a valid option. It's a valid option.
Communication.
I think when the big guys coming at you with the axe, you're like, "Ooh, let me tell you a joke," as you're dodging out of the way. But I think the other thing is I'm pretty sure it's just being able to suck it up and be humble, and just get the work done. Just dig in and get it done. And I guess I've always just enjoyed that. I mean, Alex, back in the day when I was mucking around and trying to do our first video captures of what would become Halo for our NVIDIA promo videos and all this stuff, you threw my way, figuring out the video cards, and when that didn't work, frame capture and all this crazy stuff. I don't think either one of us really knew how to do that stuff back in the day, but I was like, well, Alex wants it done and no one else is doing it, and I'm curious, so let's just do whatever it takes to get it done. And you find me sleeping and put saltine crackers and peanut butter in my mouth from the Mungie kitchen, which was very well stocked with saltines and peanut butter. And I was just like, keep going. What else you need? You're doing great. You're just doing great. Just you need some water with those saltines.
Come on.
And
we had soda.
That's true. There was soda.
We had Snapple. We had a Snapple fridge.
Ooh, that's right.
I remember that. I remember we were in that. That was 90s
Snapple was good, dude.
Yeah. Do you think? So here's pay it forward to the kids now. Do you think? And I think that's got to be a pretty big, meaningful factor for your success. Your career arc is amazing, and I'm gonna say I think that. Perspective, point of view, the hustle, all of that. Key ingredient. Agree or disagree?
Yeah. Agree. I think hustle's a big part of it, and I'm sure that's just part of naturally who I am. But it certainly helped that my family knew how to hustle, and I think Bungie was absolutely an environment back in the day where hustle was required, and I dare say respected too. It was my expectation with you as my boss was whether it was helping design a booth for Macworld or whatever Alex threw my way, I was going to catch it and do my best to hold it and run and get the, to string a metaphor, ball into the end zone, because that's just, I could tell that's what it takes to. I mean, I knew what a small business looked like in terms of our family business, but I looked at Bungie and was like, hey, this is kind of our family business, and it if you don't pull your weight and more, it's just not gonna go, or at least not go as well as you, Alex, would have wanted it to. So, but yeah, I definitely respond to if someone comes to me and is like, hey, the bar is up here, are you okay with that? I'm like, yeah, let's do it. That's just my natural personality. So
okay. For the listeners who can't see Joe right now, he just mimed a chin up.
Yeah, so sorry. The stage direction there is Joseph grabs an imaginary bar. He pulls it up to his chin and says,
Aaron, did you have a topic? Or I was about to ask another question, but I thought you were going to chime in. I didn't want to cut you off.
No, you're good. No? I was just saying that I think I agree that kind of attitude is the thing that I've seen from every level in game development, whether it's at the top or the bottom. People that get very prideful, you just see them fizzle out so fast. They don't want to work overtime. They're complaining all the time. They're and just before we started this call, I actually told Alex I'm really busy and I was complaining. That doesn't count. I don't count. Yeah. But seriously, that is the
true,
thing.
You were.
And but because my wife turned the computer off, but seriously, the that kind of attitude of I agree. I've seen it. People just they get bitter, and it's just it's never ending challenges in the game industry. It changes every year, every month. It feels like now it's new software.
Yeah.
People like this now. They don't like that anymore. Like, what? We just finished this game.
Yeah.
You know, like it's just constantly
new management. Funding's gone here. Funding's over here now. New platform. You know, it's a different equation to solve for sort of every time you open the book. Which is we should get into Halo stuff and beyond, but I do have another question,
sure.
Which is, you know, you got to Bungie in the publishing department, and you were working on ways to make us noticed and make noise and you know, use your creativity to be an authentic voice
Mm-hmm.
company in our games. And eventually, you know, follow the career arc. You're the creative director of many of these games, right? And so that's a journey.
Yeah.
And let's unpack that a little bit of how that journey, like what were the beats along the way of that transition or evolution or iteration journey, whatever, from, hey, I'm somebody who got into the business in this place with this background, which is kind of a little non-traditional and not in mainline production and game development. And here I am now, you know, leading the charge, and how you got from A to B. That's fascinating.
Well, let's see. What's the most, I don't know, not efficient way to talk about this, but I was writing down just last week because we're talking to partners for this thing I'm working on, and they wanted to know like years of service, and I was like, how many? 27 years. Oh my gosh, that's a lot of years in this biz, and many lessons all along the way. And I guess I would say that at the beginning, some of those lessons were painful ones. Some of those lessons were humbling and showed me the things that I wasn't doing well at all. And the most painful of those lessons were where I was falling short as a team member and as a leader of people, and where I had lost that ability to lead effectively for a variety of reasons. And I mean, not to talk about the tougher things right off the jump, but I think it's important for people to understand that any career trajectory like mine, I really think is as defined by the lows and the failures and where you've fallen short than the great successes. And in fact, as I look back on those 27 years, I mean, they're wonderful times, right? They're wonderful moments, but the things that really stick with me in the deep learning comes from those times where I wasn't living up to whether it was my own personal values of like kindness and being a good collaborator rather than a stubborn collaborator. If I was like communicating clearly enough, if I was phrasing things not simply enough so that everybody could understand, but like decisively and clearly, but still leaving room for people to understand regardless of where they sat in the organization, if they were really junior or very senior, that they could come and talk to me about it. That just because I was saying something like really declaratively and trying to be clear, I have this bad habit of like furrowing my brow all the time and looking more serious than I am, because I just want people to understand me. But sometimes I know people would look at that and be like, oh, Staten's like grumpy and like, is he angry? And he seems really like dug in on this. But really, I'm just trying to like, be like, no, like let's talk about this. So anyways, big first thing I would say is my journey is very much one of moments of like big failure learning moments, punctuated, and those are the lows, like punctuated by the climb back up to achievement. And then realizing even at this level of achievement, there's stuff I can do better. This is not the plateau. And in fact, the way I'm going to learn is by hitting something where I'll probably fail and do it wrong. I'll give you an example where, and this is sort of later on in career, but I had gone from a role inside of Bungie working on Halo and Destiny, and I was switching over to publishing at Microsoft in Xbox, which I loved. I really loved that 4 or 5 years I spent in publishing. I really enjoyed my time at Bungie too, but after working with the same people on the same kind of games, having the same arguments for about a decade or more. It was good to meet new people, right? But in my role in publishing, I wasn't doing the work anymore. I was advising and consulting. I was trying to help people get the information that they needed, the help that they needed, help them like avoid known traps or problems, but just basically be the best helper that I could. And I realized, oh wow, like I don't have all the skills I think that I need in this situation. I'm now trying to influence rather than just dive in and get it done. And so I failed. I failed a couple times. I wasn't breaking through with people. And I stopped and said, like, well, what's going on here? Like, why is nobody listening to me? All my tricks, all my usual, like, Joseph Staten, like, get people to laugh, and it's not working. What's going on here? And I realized I was being a bad editor. And I asked myself, well, what's the most important thing an editor can do? And after thinking about this a lot, I realized I think the most important thing an editor can do is ask honest, non-leading questions. Honest, non-leading questions. Like, help me understand what your intention is here. Like, what are you trying to get from a design perspective? Or like, what do you want out of our marketing department? Or why isn't this user research feedback working for you? And you had to do that a bunch in an honest way, because people's guards are up. They're like, why is this Microsoft guy asking me about what I want? And is he going to use this against me, or like twist my words around?
How do you disarm? It's like I had I was in a similar, when I was at Disney, like I had like 7 studios that was part of my org, and I wasn't operating any of them. I wasn't making anything. I was trying to be helpful, and it's I think maybe some of those relationships just inherently have fear in them. It's like, oh, this guy can cancel my project, or this guy could get me fired, or this guy could change. I can't do what I want to do because did you ever figure that out?
Well, I won't say if like I'm an expert, but here are the simple things I figured out. And so a lot of this is just human nature. And I mean, if anything, I think I'm a student of human nature. I mean, I think as a writer, who cares about character, you have to be. But I realized a couple things. Like, number one, you got to be persistent, and you got to be consistent, and then you've got to demonstrate results. And if you do those things and do it honestly, like really lean into like honest, non-leading questions. And if people get, oh, Staten's here again, he's going to ask me questions, and I'm going to give him answers, and then he's going to go away for a while. And when he comes back, he's going to have as close to objective truth as he's been able to get for me, plus support. And that's helpful. Like, he's not telling me what to do. He's asking me what's standing in the way of me getting done what I want to do, or what I think is best for this project. And I think over time, people realized that I was serious, and that I wasn't trying to, do an end run, and I didn't have any other agenda. I was just genuinely there, doing my best to try to help. And to be clear, having worked on the Halo games and on Destiny, I think I came with a little bit of credibility, and people realized I knew how to do certain things, but I don't think I really went as far as the other stuff, which is on a fundamental human level, making a genuine connection with someone and letting them know that you're here to work hard and help them get done what they want to get done. And I guess the big lesson from publishing in the arc of my career was how much I enjoyed helping other people execute on their vision, as opposed to being the person driving the vision myself. And when it came time to go back to Halo on Infinite, which was very much an exercise in, look, I'm the guy coming in late. Like, you all have been working very, very hard on this for many, many years. I'm here to help. I'm here to like land the best possible game. Like, what are your intentions? What do you need? And then let's go off and try to make that happen. And very quickly I learned that, boy, what you need is time. Like, you need more time in the oven with this game, et cetera, et cetera. And so, but I think I would not have been prepared to do that job if I hadn't gone through a learning process of figuring out how to be a better influencer, helper, editor, marshaller of resources, rather than the person just driving the singular vision for something. Anyways, I'll pause there, but that's at least the big part of my journey was that moment in time.
what I take from that, which I totally think is so important, is trust. Is like building trust, right? Like you can't have a relationship with people unless you trust each other, and it gets even more complicated if it's a work relationship. It gets even more complicated if it's a creative relationship. It gets even more complicated if it's a web of relationships, like there's a whole team involved. So building that trust is just so critical. So that's what I hear you learned. Absolutely. Is you learned how to build that trust first.
Yeah, that's right.
Very cool. I am remembering back to, I guess, holiday of 2000, and it must have been 2003. I had been I had left Bungie, and I was in back in Chicago, having my first kid, and this is when Halo 2 shipped, right?
Am I getting the dates right? 4, I want to say, or was it 2003? I can't remember. We'll fix it in post. We remember the dates perfectly.
Hey, listeners, this is how old we are.
I'll do your voice.
Yeah, but I remember getting Halo 2 and playing through it.
Yeah.
I played through it in just one sitting straight.
Yeah.
It's a good game.
I loved it. And I think part of why I loved it, and I know there was plenty of criticism, but part of the reason I loved it is because I did not make it. I was not in the, I wasn't in the kitchen what's the word? Yeah. I wasn't in the boil.
The trenches?
Yeah, I wasn't in the trenches. So I had a fresh look. I had a carefree, experience. Like I didn't feel like that. I don't know what the responsibility, I guess. I don't know. But in any case, it was a new kind of experience for me.
Yeah.
And did you get to play any of the Halo games that you didn't work on?
Oh yeah.
What was that like for you?
Well, I mean, it started really with Reach because we'd worked on ODST and shipped it, and
you got to tell me about ODST as well.
Okay.
Did you ship that with Bertone?
Yeah. So Paul and I were the co-project leads with Curtis Creamer as our other sort of project lead at that point.
Nice. I interrupted you though. We're going all over the place. Give me the Reach story, and we'll go back to ODST.
We'll go forward and backwards in time. It's a very complicated story structure.
ODST is great too.
So it started with me and Reach, which is an amazing game, and Marcus and Joe and everybody on that team. I had very little to no involvement in Reach because at that point, Jason and Chris Barrett and I and a handful of other people were off doing the early concept work for what became Destiny.
We'll be right back. If you like what you're hearing, like and follow the show wherever you get your podcasts. And now, a word from our sponsors. Great games aren't just made, they're crafted. Pixel by pixel, idea by idea. Amber doesn't just develop games, Amber forges the future of play, one project at a time. From the magic makers at Disney to the tech giants at Amazon and Warner Media, the biggest names in the industry trust Amber to turn their wildest ideas into reality. Why? Because the talented teams at Amber believe in pushing every boundary, breaking every mold, and having a bit of fun while they're at it. Need a partner who knows the game and plays to win? Amber has the talent, the passion, and a global network that's ready to roll. So let's skip the loading screen and get straight to the action. Discover how Amber can power up your next project at amberstudio.com. Do you want your game to live forever? To supercharge it with immense powers of endless content, a buzzing gamer community, immortality, and coin? CurseForge for Studios, an exclusive service for visionary game developers, allows you to add safe, cross-platform mods to your game and enjoy all the benefits of user-generated content without any of the risks. With CurseForge for Studios, you can harness the creativity of our 165,000 devoted creators and the traffic of 43 million monthly gamers. You can also level up with premium mods and grant your game new revenue streams. Trusted by AAA studios, CurseForge for Studios is an immortality potion for your game. Enter studios.curseforge.com and join the UGC era. Leveling up your game dev career but not sure where to start?
Maybe you're trying to break into the industry, looking to connect with other people who are making games.
Consider joining the International Game Developers Association, the IGDA, the world's largest nonprofit, member-driven professional association serving all individuals who create games.
I was in the IGDA in Chicago, met a lot of people, great way to network.
The IGDA exists to support and empower game developers around the world in achieving fulfilling and sustainable careers.
Discounts,
Educational and advocacy-based resources,
mentorship,
and solidarity across 160-plus chapters.
To join the IGDA, visit igda.org/membership and use the code IGDA 4th Curtain 15, no spaces there,
to get 15% off 1- and 2-year memberships, as well as a student membership.
Joining the IGDA is a great move for your career, and as a nonprofit supporting everyone making games, it's a great move for the whole community. Join today. Hey listeners, it's Alex from the 4th Curtain.
And Darren here. We want to give a quick shout out to the team at High Vibe PR.
High Vibe PR is our boutique communications firm. They're all about companies and brands defining the future of gaming, entertainment, and culture.
Look, when you're doing something big, you need the right people to help you tell your story. And High Vibe PR, they're the best at making it happen.
Absolutely. They've helped us at Look North World level up our messaging, connect to the right audiences, and stay ahead of the curve in this ever-changing industry.
So, if you're looking for a PR partner who gets gaming and entertainment like no one else, check them out at highvibepr.com.
That's highvibepr.com. Go give them a look. You won't regret it.
And now, back to the show.
And so playing Reach, I knew the game. I knew the tone and themes that they were going for. So it wasn't a complete surprise. But I don't think I'd ever sat down and played through an entire build of the game before it came out, partially because I wanted that experience. And I remember at the time talking to people on the team, they're like, actually it'd be great if you we just love to get your unvarnished opinions later in the development cycle. And it ended up, I just never ended up playing really before, I think right before it came out, I sat down and played through the entire campaign. And it was great. I mean, it was so, I get what you're saying, Alex, which is when you're not in the trenches or in the cauldron or pick your image, you don't get that same scar tissue and all the stuff.
And for me, whenever I play something that I've worked on, all I can see are the blemishes.
That's
all
right.
I can see is the scratch. Things don't align. It's like this was
all the try 3 bugs that got killed in triage. Yep,
exactly.
Still gnawing on them. So that was wonderful. And I had the exact same experience playing through Halo 4 and Halo 5. And frankly, seeing all the stuff that 343 did with Halo. And yeah, I mean, I had creative opinions about some of the stuff, but all of it, I knew how hard it was to deliver any of those things, whether it was a new novel in the Halo universe or a television show. I thoroughly enjoyed not just the work product, but I thoroughly enjoyed knowing the creative energy that went into getting it done, just appreciating that effort and that artistry and hard technical problem solving. By the time I got to playing Halo 4 and Halo 5, I thought I was never going to work on Halo again. So I was like, oh, this is great. I can just enjoy it as a complete fan. I don't need to unlock that little box that's painful Halo PTSD memories of crunch and, saltines and peanut butter. Sorry, that's, earlier. But
I gotta make a note for your Christmas gift next year.
It's going to be amazing.
Very good.
It's going to be amazing. But yeah, I totally am there with you. It's not hard to take off your designer hat when you play video games, but I guess any video game, not just the ones that you're familiar with. But when you can take it off and just thoroughly enjoy what someone's made, those are always really special moments for me. It's so hard being an insider to not put those glasses on when you're playing something, but when a game is so well done that you're like, oh my gosh, I'm not even thinking about how that design.
Are you playing anything right now? Just a little segue.
I am playing a bunch of stuff right now. I don't know if I can talk about exactly what I'm playing because it's related to this new thing that we're trying to get going.
You gotta tell us now. You can't just. You shouldn't have said that.
But I mean, yeah, I can give you a game that I played this last year, which was Black Myth Wukong, and which has nothing to do with the kind of game that we're making, which is why
you heard it here first.
That's
Joe's
right.
working on
a
That's
monkey
right.
game.
But one of those games where I just thought, I mean, one, it just from tone, structure, like you name it, like so many choices that team made are different choices than I would have made. Like it's a product of a unique group, like a unique cultural setting, like a very specific like goals that they were going after, and I would not make a game like that. And so I was just able to put myself in, because I would be incapable of making a game like that, to be clear. Like my context is totally different. And so just immersing myself in their world and their creative choices, it was completely fun. I mean, who doesn't like a game where you're like magical monkey roaming around beating the crud out of Yogwai? I mean, that's amazing. But it was just a really fun game, and games like that just are outside of my area of expertise. It's I love being in that zone of just being a fan. That's where I started. Yeah. So
cool. It is interesting. That's another just completely random comment from me, which is our industry is so cool that way. It's like just think about like film, TV, even music. It's like we have games coming out of every corner of the globe that can be successful internationally, and it's just going to get more and more like that. Yeah, and good.
Yeah,
that's super cool. Okay, all right. So let's rewind a little bit.
All right,
back to ODST. You, Paul, Curtis, you guys. Is it a triumvirate? Is this your first gig, sort of running the show?
Yeah, I mean, for me and Paul, it was the first time, our first shot at being project leads, and for me, the first time that I ever had that breakdown of roles, which is a more creatively minded designer and a more technically minded designer. In this case, it was creative director and design director. But Paul and I had such a great partnership where it's the closest I've ever come to really in the industry of having someone who we were so different in many, many ways, but our Venn diagrams overlapped like just enough that it was easy for us to stay tethered around a shared vision. And then going back to trust, like trusting each other to just go in separate directions and get stuff done, because ODST was a very, very small project on a very tight timeline with very hard technical constraints. I mean, we were the Halo 3 engine with a handful of features added on top of it, but not a lot of other, engineering support. So we needed to maximize creativity and minimize technical risk. And I was in charge of maximizing creativity, and Paul's in charge of minimizing technical risk. And maybe if you get Paul on here, he would disagree, be like, "What? Staten's insane. It was this." But in my recollection, like that's really how our roles broke down, and we met in the middle around the experience that we're making together. And that was a lesson for me in terms of how important it is to have trust with someone, but also be comfortable like giving up decision making. Because at that point, I had not really made any like major like leadership level command decisions on a project yet, and I was actually uncomfortable making some of those decisions, especially in the technical realm. Like it's just not my. I can learn things. I'm a pretty good learner, but I'm not a trained technical person. But having someone who I could trust and then know that they would get the job done, because Paul's an incredibly hardworking person. But yes, that delegation was a really important leadership skill to learn too. And I know people say it all the time, like, yeah, you got to delegate. But that was the first time where I realized like what that means on a day-to-day, decision by decision basis in a very pressurized environment. Because with ODST, not only were we trying to ship a game, but it was a contractual requirement for Bungie to separate from Microsoft. And so Harold Ryan, the studio head at the time, I like Harold a lot. He is not a subtle guy. When he wants something, he's like, you need to do this thing. And so there was this pressure on us, like to do this for the studio, to get this done efficiently, on budget, on time. there I am, the creative guy. I'm like, yeah, but what if? But what if it was a city at night? And it's not a Halo game as much as it's a noir detective game. That's kind of a metaphor for Dante's Inferno, and they had a shared hub level, and and for the first time, an engineer is going to be a major character. He doesn't say anything, but he speaks with his tentacles. All these thoughts are going around in my brain. But what I learned too was sublimate all of those things and just be the leader that can, with clarity, crystallize a creative vision. Trust that your partner is going to run, block and tackle on the technical stuff and figure out those gnarly problems, and come together as a team of leaders to get this very hard thing done on a deadline. So there are a lot of personal lessons there. There are a lot of leadership lessons there. But ODST, I would say for me, if I look at all the moments in my career, was where it all came together, and I learned the most in the most compressed amount of time.
And I love that game. It's a good game.
Yeah. And you remember, so Paul came down to LA to work with us at Industrial Toys for a while.
That's right. Yeah.
So we had some good times together. And he won a lot of Super Bowls with the Patriots during that time period. Yeah.
That's right. Oh, yeah. Paul and the Patriots.
Yeah. Not anymore. Sorry, Paul. Okay. Do you remember any decisions that you ended up agonizing over
on ODST specifically?
Yeah. Or just, I mean, if from ODST, yeah. Or
let's see.
I guess.
All right. I'm now thinking of what were the most agonizing decisions.
Was that the hardest game you worked on? In your career, if you had to say this was the most challenging one?
I would say I have a two-part answer. Definitely ODST was from just a learning point of view, how to be a better leader. Also from an individual contribution point of view, there was just a lot of work that not just I had to do, but everybody on that team. You had to roll up your sleeves and get in the guts of the engine and just get stuff done. And so that was just hard as a individual contribution role. But I would say probably the hardest thing that I've worked on was really on Infinite. And that was hard for a different reason, which is that game was massive in terms of team size. And my position on that team was nominally the head of creative for the product. But that game had many, many, many talented technical and creative people. And they had made the vast majority of decisions for that game. And so coming on late in the project and just helping that team make the most of the time and resources that they had, or at least doing my best to help them make the most of the time and resources that they had, that was hard just because of the scale. I mean, that was in a very, very large team with a lot of
How many folks were on that team? How big was the team size?
I'm going to say around 800 or 900 people, but that did not include all the external help and contractors. I may be wrong there, but my recollection is it was pushing close to 1,000 people, more than it was 500 people. And so
in-house,
I can't remember if it was all a combination of full-time employees and contractors, but it was a large team.
Not remote, right? Was there?
It actually, when I joined, it started off as remote. It was just coming off the worst of COVID, and everybody was basically safely in their houses or where they lived. So yeah, imagine I show up one day, right? Boom, I appear. And I'm like, hey, everybody!
On everybody's screens.
A grunt jumps out of the drop pod. Hey! As quickly as possible, trying to get an understanding of the game, understanding the people, have new people that I'm now managing. I think I ended up the whole creative organization, and I didn't directly manage all these people, but the whole creative organization was more than 200 people. And so the largest organization I've ever attempted to manage. And the challenge there was, and I realized pretty quickly, the number of creative decisions I'm going to make is relatively low. and those decisions will be driven by mostly consensus, and like getting people on board with this, not consensus with the whole team, but like getting the 343 leadership team to agree, like, for example, we need more time for these reasons. If you spend more time, here's the benefit. These are the features that we'll get. We've got the research data and every piece of data we can marshal to try to prove that this is valuable time. There's those kind of decisions. But the hardest part of that job was the management job, and just being there for people as they tried to do something incredibly hard, which is ship a big game with all these expectations. I don't think, mostly my job there was, not to be the creative guy, was to be the good human guy and try to help people do their best, give them the help they need under very, very difficult circumstances.
Yeah. That's a high degree of difficulty right there. How do you rally a team that big?
I can tell you how I tried. I mean, I don't, to be clear, I love my time there. I'm very happy that I went back to Halo, and very thankful that Bonnie and the team trusted me to come back and be of help. Now that meant a lot to me. So, I mean, the first thing I did is, see previous note about asking non-leading questions. And that took a while for people to believe that that's what I was doing, right? But just asking, why is it this way? As an example, when I first joined the team, and this is a very small example, but it's the one that comes to mind, I just asked the question, like, why aren't there very many Marines in the open world? I've been playing an early build of the game, and I just noticed there aren't very many Marines out and about in the world. And if there are Marines, they're really localized to a particular place, and they don't really follow you around. I noticed that. What are the reasons why? I didn't start off with like, Marines are a hallmark of every Halo experience, and if you don't have Marines in your Warthog, like popping off every time you do a cool jump, it's not Halo. Like, what are you doing? I did not approach it that way. You
didn't start there?
No, I didn't start there. I just asked this question, which is like, hey, why is this the case? And it turned out, guess what? This is the biggest Halo world that's ever been created. And the systems weren't designed for Marines to properly pathfind, especially over like varied terrain, et cetera, et cetera. There's all these very gnarly technical challenges that they had decided we don't have time for this. Like, we're supposed to be shipping in 3 or 4 months. Like, we just don't have time. And over a longer series of conversations, it was one of the things that I was able to bring to the table for consideration by Bonnie and the other leaders of like, hey, look, if we get more time, the team actually has the plan to be able to enable Marines that are able to spend more time with you as a player, which is great because there's this whole dialogue system that they've got that it's just not firing because they're not close enough to you for you to be able to hear it. They literally like don't follow you. They're not able to follow you. There was a longer list of things. It's just one feature example, but it all started with questions. And I think if I did my job at all well on that team, or the best days, I think for me, were ones where by asking honest, non-leading questions, we got to the truth of a situation, and I was able to take that information, push it up the chain, and fight for things and say, look, we can get this. This is going to make the game demonstrably better, but we have to do X, Y, and Z, and be able to get those resources and go back to the team and say, cool, we've got this stuff. Like, let's go. But that was really the job. But I wouldn't have been able to do that job if I hadn't learned that lesson.
Yeah. That makes me, I got like two questions for you. So sort of like on opposite ends of the game development spectrum from like individual contributor to these big, massive teams. I'll start with the big, massive team question, which is, what do you think is going to happen? I look at the last, I guess, 2 years now.
Yeah.
And it seems to me like the bar.
Yep.
Or the burden or the effort or whatever you want to call it, like just the ability to operate at that AAA high end of the market, the $70 box product space, it's just gotten more and more risky. Like games take longer to make, that makes them more expensive, more people are distributed.
Yeah.
there's a lot of games, so this, like competing for people's time, et cetera, and we've seen a lot of I guess like contraction in that space. You've experienced that. I've experienced that.
Mm-hmm.
What is that? What do you think is on the other side of that? Like, I'm an optimist. I see all sorts of like cool God rays, coming through the the dark clouds.
Yeah.
But what do you think, Joe? Like, what is 1, 2, 3 years down the road look like for game development, particularly in and around that really cool high production value, richly designed and built worlds, the thick narrative, all of that. Like, what does that look like? What do you think?
That's a big, juicy question. Well, like you,
or think or want, either one.
Those two very different.
They might be different.
Yeah. I mean, like you, I'm a hopeful person. I don't know if I would call myself an optimist. I guess hope is maybe the more realistic version of it. I don't know, but I'm in the same frame of mind that you are, which even having have our studio get closed at Netflix, which was not ideal, right? That was not what any of us wanted. I am in this state now where I'm looking at the landscape, and I think the first thing, which is the hard thing to say, is as much as I would wish it to be true, I don't think it's going to get better anytime like rapidly quick, like fast enough for a lot of the hurt and the bleeding in our industry to like shut off quick enough for people to stop hurting. Like I genuinely am worried, Alex. Like we've lost so many jobs have been cut, and I don't believe there's like enough open positions to actually bring everybody back in quickly. I think we're going to see people leave the industry. I do, and I hate saying that because that kind of talent drain is going to be really, really hard. And I mean it like the beginning of career level, people who are later in their career. There's tremendous value at both ends and all across the spectrum. From new people, you get like fresh ideas, right?
Mm-hmm.
Youthful energy, like they see things differently. They're not calcified or hopefully not cynical at a young age and come in like roaring and ready to go and shake the foundations and do cool stuff. All they need is like money and trust, right? To like just try stuff. And money's hard to come by right now. And you gotta like earn trust. It's tricky. And then at the top or higher end, at least higher budget end, you have people who are later in career or used to certain kinds of compensation or working in certain ways and want to leverage all their experience and talent and connection and thoughts. But those teams, generally speaking, cost more. And I think people look at both sides of this equation, and I think the thread I see running through it is like risk tolerance is very low right now. And I think everybody's kind of like holding on to like wait until the storm passes. But I guess I'm really worried in the short term. Like in short term, I mean like the next 12, 18 months of like what happens to our industry while the storm is going. It's been going on for a while. So that's one sort of setting the table. The story begins in an emotionally low place, but the story's going to get better. Don't worry. The story's a good one. Which is my hope for the future is that I think this industry, like all creative industries, figures out a way to refresh and reinvigorate itself. And I think it always comes from unexpected places, or at least the innovation I'm excited about comes from unexpected places. That's not to say like the big forever games aren't going to add new modes and figure out new ways to like bring new novel experiences to people. Like all that's going to happen. Like the well-funded teams are going to keep digging in and doing cool stuff. But I mentioned, like Black Myth Wukong. Like that was, at least from my point of view, I don't understand, the Chinese game development scene very well, but that team, from my point of view, like sort of came out of nowhere. I'm making air quotes right now, and I was like, holy crap! Like this game's amazing. Like who made this game? So I think there are always going to be teams that have gotten the funding and gotten the trust and are able to ship cool stuff. I also think that there are going to be established teams that have been grinding in ways like just below a lot of people's radars thinking like Arrowhead with Helldivers, and they've just been quietly grinding away, and they ship something, Helldivers 2, which is a natural extension of something that they do really well, and it comes in and it hits, and it's novel and it's exciting and it has polish, and people like it. It's great marketing and great social media and stands out tonally and all these kinds of things. But for me, it's always that, like, someone is out there grinding right now and has found a way, either because they've gotten some funding or support, or has just been willing to take the pain for long enough to like get to this place where they're ready to to launch. I have a lot of hope, nay faith,
yes,
that our industry is capable of doing that. I just worry that it seems, I mean, you tell me, guys, but like, it seems harder than it's been, at least in recent memory, to be able to do that.
It's definitely harder. I love what you're talking about there with the grind. It's like I tell people how important iteration is all the time. It's like you rarely get it right on the first try, and how you get to great is you improve. And I think Arrowhead and Helldivers is just such a fantastic example of iterating through the tipping point. Where you have a start, wherever your starting point is, you can get to the ideal. It will take time, and will take focus, persistence, and iteration. Not giving up, surviving, figuring out a way to survive. My view on how our industry evolves from where we are right now is kind of that. It's like we all sort of are tasked with this goal of trying to figure out how to iterate through the tipping point and how to survive to get there. And I also have that optimism that this new, there's always a new crop of game makers, and the crop of game makers that are joining the industry today are so much have so many advantages over where we were. Even if you just think about it from the perspective of what's your reference, like my reference growing up, Star Wars and Blade Runner, and reading Lord of the Rings, and kids today they have a freaking 200,000 copy Steam library, and all of Netflix. They have all of humanity's content, at their fingertips as a reference point. So I think just from that perspective, a lot of hope.
Yeah, I agree.
Going to the other end of the spectrum, though, I want to ask you about writing the novel, Contact Harvest.
Oh, great!
New York Times best-selling book. Did you get a dinner? Did you get a free subscription to the New York Times?
Or something?
Did you get something?
A gold book?
I got a bunch of free copies of the book. If you would like some, they're in my garage.
You signed one and sent it to me, and I keep it.
Oh, that's very cool.
It's very, I actually have a couple of bottles of Fieldstone wine and your book. It's in a little shrine.
Oh, wow.
And I will put an image of this podcast next to it. But yeah, no, I've always fantasized about the author lifestyle of kind of being the lone wolf, like captain of my own destiny. I'm creative when the spark hits me, and you did it, and what was it like? Like, were you working? Were you doing this at night, and you were doing game dev during the day?
Yeah.
Were you wearing a smoking jacket and have a pipe and walk around and pontificate? What was happening?
Well, I may not get the dates right here, but my recollection is that this was in the middle of Halo 3, and so I was helping with Halo 3. I was writing this book. We had two young kids at that point, my son and daughter, and my wife, Susan, her well. It was hard because I was trying to be a dad, and a good dad, and a good husband, and a good game maker, and a first-time novelist, having never done that before. Went to grad school and wrote a thesis, and so I knew how to write long things. Like, I had the discipline to sit down and do it. But I quickly learned why people, or at least people of sort of the way my brain works, need to be shut in a room and just struggle with yourself and force yourself to hit daily milestones, and just slog through days where you're writing stuff which is like awful, that is awful, but you just have to keep going, because if you don't get through the awful, you're never going to get to good. my kids will probably carve this on my tombstone, but one of the things I learned, which I tell them all the time, or told them all the time when they were still living with me and working on papers for high school and stuff, is that writing is rewriting. Like, that is the lesson I learned, that you have to commit to the fact that the first or second or third time that you go through something, you're not done. You got to keep going again and again and again. So did I enjoy it? I will say it's the hardest thing I've ever done, except being a good dad and being a good husband and doing those personal things in life. The hard and wonderful, in case my wife is listening to this podcast. But joking aside, like in terms of like making my brain do something creative, like it was the hardest thing I've ever done. And I think that's largely because I'm very hard on myself. And at the end of the day, when you're a writer, hopefully you have a good editor. And I did. Certainly Eric Rabb was my editor at Tor. He was great. But it's up to you. Like, you have to be able to back away. And Alex, I think you know me well enough for like me leaving work and saying
back
I'm
away
done.
is not really part of your shtick.
No, I've gotten better. But like being able to say this is done. This is done. You have to prioritize other things now. That was really hard. I think I picked probably the worst time in life to try to write a book because of how busy I was with my family and working on Halo 3. And I am eager to, you know me, I always got stuff cooking in my notebooks and files and things somewhere. But
I was going to ask you guys, do you have more books in you?
I'm not going to say anything today, but like at some point I will, I look forward to the day where I have the opportunity to devote what I would say is the required time to writing to do it right for me. I really, to do it the way I would want to and be mentally healthy, I would have to be a sole focus for me, and just to do that. And you know what? I hope to get my next book out before ChatGPT comes along. And
it's too late.
It's too late. What do I got? Like 3 months? Like, you tell me what's going on.
You got to finish it quick.
Yeah.
But all kidding aside, ChatGPT that question.
Yeah, that's true. ChatGPT be like, "Don't worry, dude. I already wrote it for you. It's all good, dog."
Yeah. The trilogy.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, writing the book was great. Looking back, we talked earlier about, you remember the painful things. I'm talking about the painful things, but I found that writing a book and bringing a character and characters to life on the page was in a world to life. I really, really enjoyed that, and definitely would love to keep doing it if given the chance.
Very, very cool. I mean, it is interesting to hear you talk about it, where it's like, when you think about the craft of writing, which is has infinite simplicity and infinite complexity at the same time.
Yeah.
So, it's like there's 26 letters, there's a certain amount of words.
Yep.
And you can assemble them in lots of different ways. But that's kind of it. And it's you. And you're not managing 800 people on a team that has an engine that's not feature complete or whatever. There's none of that, Yep. But it's just as hard.
It is.
And the same things apply.
Yep.
You gotta iterate from your starting point to the great point.
Iterate.
Really interesting.
Yeah. So thanks for reading the first 50 pages of that book while I figured out how to write a book. I appreciate it.
All right, Joe, we've kept you, so long. Thank you so much for
thank you
being
guys.
so generous with your time. What a treat to catch up, chat, and just hang out.
Great stories.
Best of luck with all that you're working on now. I am so excited to
Thanks, Alec.
get a glimpse of it. So I hope you are successful with
Wish us luck.
making progress. Yeah. And we'll see you around. And say hi to your lovely wife, Susan, for us.
I will. Absolutely. I will. Thank you for editing out that one little part of the interview that we talked about.
Yeah, I'll edit it out and I'll send it straight to
Susan.
It's going to be the
Thank you, Alex. And great meeting you, Aaron. Thanks for the questions.
Nice
It was a lot
you
of fun.
Such an honor.
Cool. We'll see you around.
All right, sounds good.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening to the Fourth Curtain Podcast. Visit us at thefourthcurtain.com to find our monthly newsletter and support the show via Patreon. The Fourth Curtain Podcast is a production of Fourth Curtain Media, lovingly edited by Bryen Hensley of Noise Floor Sound Solutions. Production support by May Lee with community management by Doug Zartman and art production by Paul Russell. Thanks again for listening.